Hey everybody, welcome back to Fish Scales and Shrimp Tales. So today, we're going to continue on with our theme of tank stages and where we are, and at the same time we're going to talk about the snowball shrimp tank. I recognize the fact, guys, that some of these videos may be coming out very close together for you, but filming them was reasonably far apart, and unfortunately, as I've said before, trying to get this new business started, and Christmas holidays, New Year's, wife's birthday, all these things sort of intertwine together to make things very difficult for me to get done in a timely, organized fashion. So we're a little mixed up, taking a couple of missteps here with timing on things. But as I said before, a lot of my videos are filmed pretty far apart. So even if we're looking at a tank today that you might have seen last week, we could be a month and a half apart between the times that I've filmed them. But we're not going to talk a lot about the snowball tank today as far as the update goes. What I want to talk about is what it means to have a mature tank. We're going to update a little bit on the snowballs and how things are going, but really we're going to talk about a mature tank. And hopefully I can keep this video a little bit short because there's not much to talk about for an update. So let's hit the update stuff really, really quick. Although it doesn't look like it, there are a fair number of snowballs in here. I don't see any new babies. I think the newer babies that I was talking about in the last video, I'm assuming I was, it looks like they were first-time parents, and most, if not all, of the eggs were dropped. I don't see any buried females in here anymore. I do see a couple of small baby shrimp. I never see very many in this tank because there's so many ways for them to hide, and they blend in so doggone well in this tank, it's hard to come across them. Also, there is a new baby albino Cory in here. Dum Dum has laid several eggs in here before. They've always ended up just being snail food, shrimp food, Ottos, Corys, whoever's eating the eggs. They never really get an opportunity to hatch, and I'm not really interested in breeding Corys right now, so I just leave them. But one of them, at least one of them anyways, did manage to survive, and I've seen it swimming around here from time to time. Hopefully, maybe he comes in front of the camera while we're rolling here, but I doubt it. I usually only see him at food time. Yeah, at food time. Let's learn how to speak good, shall we? Maybe he comes out. I dropped in a little bit of food down here at the bottom to try and encourage some of the snowballs to come out, because I realize looking into this tank sometimes can be rather boring because it hardly looks like there's anything in here at times, even though I know there is. So, that's kind of snowball tank update over. Let's talk about what's going on and what a mature tank is. So this tank is one of the longer running shrimp breeding tanks that I've had set up. It's probably fully 8 months going into its 9th month old. And that to me is we're getting into a mature, seasoned tank. Now, no, it's not the same as a 1 year or 2 year old tank would be. I've got a couple of those upstairs. Maybe we'll talk about them later. But we are at a stage now where I would say we're pretty much at a mature tank. Now, this tank, unfortunately, because of some mistakes I've made, is also slightly in transition. And we're going to talk about what that means. But a mature tank is a tank that would typically be an older tank. It's been around for a while. And you can see signs of an ecosystem at work in here. You can see that there is natural bacteria and microfauna that breaks down our leaf matter, our organic waste, fish waste. You can see all of that at work. You can see oftentimes, if you're just here looking into this tank, you'll see copepods or Daphnia go darting by. These are all healthy signs that you have a developed ecosystem in here. At this point, you'll start to get an idea of what plants are working and what plants aren't and why. Maybe you start establishing plants that grow in here better and replanting them and taking plants out that aren't doing as well. Your water quality and your water parameters should be doggone near rock stable now. You're probably not going to find any variance in them if you're even still testing. I don't test my tanks hardly ever unless I see that there's an issue developing. I haven't checked the water parameters on this tank and I don't know how long. And I will say now, a mature tank, generally speaking, is also a tank that can absorb the everyday. And what I mean by that is sooner or later in a tank's life, you're gonna make a mistake. You're gonna add too much food, you're gonna have your lights on too long, you're gonna go on vacation and forget to do something. And you're gonna come back and go, oh my goodness, what did I do? A mature tank is a tank that will typically absorb these inconsistencies and problems and keep on ticking regardless, and might give you some small warning signals that you've done something wrong without going completely over the edge. And that's kind of where I am with this tank. I made a mistake a while ago with my lighting, which I'm sure I explained to you fully in the last video. And I pulled out a whole whack of the floaters that were in here. Here's the problem. I didn't replace that filtration part of it, and I didn't realize that I really didn't have enough plants in here to cope with it after I pulled all the floaters out. And that created some problems. One of the problems it created was an algae issue. Now, initially, I started to get this weird wispy hair algae coming out of all the Siriu stone, which is not uncommon. If you get slightly unbalanced in your tank, it's not uncommon to get this wiry looking algae growing out of your stones. You got to remember, your rocks and your hardscape are always leaching out mineral deposits and proteins and whatever it is we're talking about. They're always leaching some of that out, and that's what that algae is looking for. So it grabbed hold of this and started growing it on most of my rocks in here. And I thought, oh, I have an issue, and realized almost immediately what I had done. So I took some plants like the water wisteria. Guys, I'm sure by now you've probably told me what it is. But like I said, keep in mind, I record these pretty far apart before I put them up. So if you've already told me whether this is water wisteria or water sprite, I'm sorry, I'll get it wrong. I'll get it wrong the next time. There we go. Learn how to speak well. So I immediately went and I put some plants in here and some extra cuttings to try and cope with the need for a little bit more nutrient absorption, realizing that I really hadn't put enough plants in here, and some of the plants I put in here never took off. So of course they're not absorbing any nutrients like my crypt down here and the one in the middle. So I had to do a few things. I had to take the log out and scrape it down. You notice there's no Java moss on here anymore because, well, it was infested with hair algae. But on a mature tank, you're going to see those signs. You're going to see copepods and daphnia. You're going to see the natural breakdown of organics in your tank. You might even get some tannins being released in your tank. It will have a very organic sounds like a silly name for it, but it'll have a very natural flow. You'll notice how the shrimp in this tank, they almost just hover around. They're not darting about. They're not in a big hurry. There's no concern. You'll notice the fish are very relaxed. Well, except Dum Dum. She's a little crazy. I think that's my fault from having her in such a small tank for so long before I put her in here. But there's a very relaxed flow to this tank. And you can just see that by the way that the shrimp and the fish and everybody just sort of coexists in here together. Nobody's in a hurry. Nobody's darting around. Nobody's sick. To be fair, I don't get sick fish, guys. I guess I'm just lucky. The substrate is taking care of a lot of that filtration. You can see your mulm is slowly starting to settle down. And if I put the camera down a little bit, guys, that's not going to work. Hang on just a second. I'm going to grab myself a flashlight so you can have a look at this. If I put a flashlight on down here, you can sort of see that line here. You can see this line all the way across the aquarium. So guys, that's sort of a dividing line of your substrate, where there's air and where there isn't, and how that filtration is going. You can see where that mulm is seeping down into the sand and getting eaten and reprocessed into new, different organic materials that eventually your plants will be able to take up as nutrients, and the whole cycle begins again. I'm just going to zoom in here a little bit, guys, so there's a little bit of something going on. So your mature tank is going to be a tank that your parameters are stable on. You've got your lighting figured out. Your fish are healthy and relaxed. You're probably going to have some mulm on the bottom of your tank. You're going to have some leaf litter that's decaying. You might even have a few dead snail shells around. These are all things that are contributing to that ecosystem. Now, I'm not saying a mature tank is not a tank that you have to maintain or watch. It is, but it's one that you're going to have to do a whole lot less with. One of the other things also that's important about a mature tank, there's so much going on in this tank and its own ecosystem, and the plant matter that decays and the snails that live and die and everything that goes on. One of the things I've noticed with this tank as it matures is I need to, not only do I need to intervene with it less, or rather interact with it less, I also feed this tank a lot less. Now, admittedly, there are less shrimp in this tank. If you followed the series, you know what happened when I first ordered these shrimp. So there were very few of them in here when I started. But because there's so much natural food, the biofilm and the algae and the snails that die and decaying plant matter, I don't need to put food in this tank for the shrimp or for the fish anywhere near as often. In fact, if I do, I'm probably going to have a problem. I toss a little bit of food in here a couple of times a week at the most now. And everybody's happy. Everybody's healthy. Dum Dum still lays eggs. In fact, did I mention that this video? I've re-recorded this video so many times, guys. I'm sorry. Dum Dum did lay eggs in here, and usually they all get eaten and devoured, but there's a couple in here floating around. I think I mentioned that this video. I'm sorry, guys. Squirrel. So, yeah, a mature tank is not necessarily going to be the tank that you had in mind when you planted it. You're going to have decided that some plants do better than others, and maybe you didn't get your lighting quite right. Maybe you put different stones in there that are mucking with your parameters, and you've decided you need to make some changes. A mature tank is simply one that has maybe not a fully developed, but an ecosystem that is well on its way to being very developed for the tank specific that it is in. You're going to have your copepods and your daphnia and your little critters in the substrate that are all eating and reprocessing your fish waste and your leaf matter, your organics, all that sort of thing. And I find that these natural tanks just have a very slow, easy flow about them. Nobody's in a hurry. Everything is very relaxed. Everybody's very healthy. Nothing seems to be stressed. All of the colors of your fish or your shrimp are typically very bright and enhanced because they're very relaxed and they're very happy. They're getting all the nutrition that they need out of the tank. You're not, constantly putting in fish food. They're eating whatever they were intended to eat, in nature, assuming you're not bringing piranhas in your tank or something. I just find a mature tank has a very relaxed, easy flow, and nobody's in a hurry, and your fish are happy and healthy. And yes, you're going to have some algae. You're going to have some plants that are dead or dying, and some that are doing very well as the tank sort of settles in and decides what it wants to be instead of what you were trying to make it be. That is really the difference, I think, between a natural aquascape and an aquascape made to look natural. Does that make sense to you guys? You can make an aquascape that looks natural and you keep trimming it and it looks beautiful all the time, and you keep the algae out, and you can call that a natural tank because it has a lot of plants. Maybe it has a dirt substrate. But a real natural aquarium is one where you've put all the ingredients in the tank, and maybe you put them all where you wanted them. And now you've let the tank decide what it's going to look like and what it's going to be through the natural process of things living and dying. And I'm not saying you never interfere. I mean, I've had to put my hands in here. I've had to put new plants in here because of the issue I created with the lighting and the floaters. And I decided I didn't like the direction it was taking, so I slightly altered it. And that's okay. But a natural tank is one where you've really just sort of, for the most part, taken your hands off and you just let it do its own thing. And that's kind of where this tank is. I really don't muck around with this tank very much. I am trying to deal with the hair algae, but I'm not in here every day. I mean, it's a shrimp tank, so they don't want to be bugged. So I was in here quite a bit a couple days ago. I did another 25% water change because, as I said previously, I didn't want so many tannins in my tank as I had. So I have done probably 75% in the last month and a half or 2 months, which for me, guys, is a huge amount. I don't do water changes, but the tannin level in this tank was just so high. I really needed to do something. So, but yeah, a couple days ago, I was in here, did a water change, cleaned off that log of all the Java moss that was infested with some hair algae, got the toothbrush out and swirled it around a few of the plants just to try and clean things up a little bit. And that's probably all I'll do for the next couple of months now. I won't touch it. You'll notice when the fish swim around, they kick up a lot of debris into the water column. That would probably bother a lot of people, but again, that's all part of that natural ecosystem going to work. And yeah, it's not super clean, it's not super pretty when you see a fish take off in a cloud of muck he kicks up from the bottom of the water, but that is natural. That is precisely what would normally happen, and they're not bothered by it. They're perfectly happy, they're very comfortable in here, their colors are all up. This is kind of what we're striving for or at least that's what I'm striving for with a natural aquarium. I want that natural look. I want to see things living and dying and that natural life cycle taking place within the ecosystem that I developed and I've now just sort of let go and flourish on its own. Yeah, there's algae in here that I don't like. There's, my Anubis in the corner is just covered in dark green spot algae. Not a fan of it. I'm not a fan of the hair algae that's in the tank. But fish and shrimp don't care. This is normal to them. This to them is still not normal. This is so much cleaner and so much prettier than normal for these guys. And one of the things that you don't want is you don't want your fingers in the tank all the time. I don't want to add chemicals to the tank all the time. I don't want to be in here all the time. I'm going to do what I need to do, and I'm going to let the tank be for as long as humanly possible again, because that's how I get the best results with breeding shrimp and fish. I mean, I have fish breeding in almost all of my aquariums right now, guys, and I didn't ask for any of it. It's actually gotten a little ridiculous. I've been talking to my wife about what we're going to do because, guys, I could have so many albino cories. It's disgusting. The red cherry shrimp tank right now, the albino cory laid a bunch more eggs in here last night. There's probably over 100 fertilized eggs on the glass, and I know 99% of those are all going to get eaten or destroyed. If I really, really wanted to breed fish, I could breed cories like there's no tomorrow. I could have so many, and you'll see that I'm going to do another video, and I'll show you some of the babies that I kept. But this is kind of what we're striving for, guys. This is what I look forward to. I love this natural balanced tank with a working ecosystem. I've had these air sponges get disconnected from my airline and not noticed it for a period of days or a week or more. And the substrate and the plants just carry on doing the filtration. I didn't even notice that they weren't plugged in. I had to come back and clean them up a little bit so I could plug them back in, because they've been dormant for so long I didn't realize the line had even come off of it. And the tank just carried on like nothing had changed. I didn't need to check my water parameters or any of it. The filter quit, wasn't a big deal. The tank just kept on going because of the microorganisms and the ecosystem that is going on in this tank are actually doing all of the work for me, and that filter really isn't doing anything more than circulating the water and adding a little bit of air to it. That's really about it. Well, guys, I hope I haven't talked to you to death. I hope in my ramblings you all got something out of that. This is probably going to be the last of this series of tank types, unless I can think of any need to add to it. Maybe I'll show you the little tank upstairs, but I know you guys have seen that one before. But I've got a couple of other tanks that are significantly much more mature. They're just not tanks in parts of the house that I typically would film through. So I am still thinking of adding another tank, guys. By the time you get to this video, I will probably have decided whether or not to do that. I recognize that some of these videos are, the frequency of videos that I put out is probably going to drop a little bit, just as I start trying to get things moving business-wise. But I will try and keep up on it and give you fairly regular updates on how the tanks are doing and any new projects that I start. What I'm thinking of doing, guys, I'm thinking of taking a small 5-gallon tank and trying a very, very natural setup, very much like what Father Fish has suggested, just doing a tank with the substrate system that I typically put in, chucking in a bunch of plants and grabbing a jar of water out of one of the local creeks I have here, throwing it in there and just letting that develop for a month, and adding some simple fish, maybe a simple pair of guppies, or what I'd really like to do is put in little pea puffers. I've never owned them before. I've heard they're a pain in the neck to keep, but I'd love to try kind of a natural planted ecosystem Father Fish method tank with pea puffers and see how that goes. I'm not sure yet, guys. I'm kicking the idea around, but the wife is going to start having to fit about the number of aquariums in this house pretty soon, I'm sure. Anyways, guys, till next time, hope you've gotten something out of this. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you're having success with your aquariums at home. Until next time, talk to you then.